after his friend shot it, that's kind of what he heard. Very interesting story. And Derek's friend couldn't be on the show. He was unwilling to come on. He's a current police officer, and he doesn't want it to affect his work. So out of respect, he declined to come on the show, and that's fine. But lucky enough, we have Derek tonight, and Derek's going to be telling us what his friend ran into. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And probably on the website, you've noticed some of the older episodes not showing up, a player not showing up. Ever since I moved servers, that seems to be an issue. So I'm going back through after each episode and making sure there's something on there. There's a player on there. It's a little time consuming. There's a newer player. I'm trying to convert things to a higher audio quality, so it's a better quality on the website too as well. If I'm going through each episode and making sure there's a player there, I'm going to try and make everything sound better too as well. So it's very time consuming. I'm aware of it. I appreciate you guys emailing me about it, and it will be fixed soon. So thank you for your patience. Let's jump right into it tonight. Derek, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Oh, absolutely. Well, glad to be here.
And if you would, kind of start from the very beginning with your encounter. I was fascinated the other day when we were talking and you describing everything that happened. But for the audience, if you would, just kind of start from the very beginning and walk them right into it.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm from Buffalo, New York. People who aren't very accustomed to Buffalo, New York don't know where it is. It's pretty much in the ass crack of New York. So it's right there. We're all crazy bunch of snow all the time, and it's just wild. We're a lake town, so we got a lot of outdoor activities here, a lot of fishing, a lot of just having fun outside. And my story actually doesn't take place in Buffalo. It takes place in a area outside of the normal suburbs. So Buffalo's kind of like a ring. Buffalo, the city, is in the middle, and then there's a bunch of rings of suburbs that go out farther into like woods. Like whenever I tell somebody I'm from New York, they automatically think, "Oh, you're from the city." But no, it's quite actually a bit wild out here. And my story takes place in one of those kind of far off suburbs called Franklinville, which is when it starts getting into Amish country. Right where there's not a lot of stuff going on. It takes place with me and my dad's best friend, Kenny. A little background on Kenny. Kenny is a former Army sergeant and police officer and SWAT member. 2 tours in Iraq. Big guy, about 6'4", probably 280 pounds. Just a big, muscular, massive man. Really kind, really good family man. Got two kids, and is a huge outdoorsman. Loves hunting. So one day I get a call from him saying it's about November time, so it's right around deer season here. But he was going to look out for a coyote that was messing around with his property, and really he loves coyote hunting. It's just something he always has done. So he calls me and he tells me, "Hey, you want to come out with me?" Because I'm kind of his go-to guy. My father does not hunt. My father is not an outdoorsman whatsoever. I get that all from my mom's side of the family. But and he calls me and says, "Hey, man, I really want to go out just in the morning. Can you take a drive down? Maybe." It was a Friday. I was like, sure, of course. I have off on Fridays anyway, so it worked out real well. And so I meet him there, and we go to his cabin that he calls the lodge, and we spend the night there, and we wake up in the morning, we go out to go hunt. Well, he's got quite a bit of acreage. He's got probably, I'd say, I think like maybe 90, maybe 100 acres. But we were only going on the outer rims of his acreage here. And he calls the beginning of the trail where his neighbor's trail and his trail meet, which is technically the end of the trail if you're walking from the lodge onto the trail. And technically where I start, it's the beginning, but he calls that the end. So it's a little topsy-turvy that way. But I said, hey, listen, I'm going to go on the tree stand that's at the end of the trail, which is technically the beginning, and I'm going to just wait for deer because I'm not coyote hunting. I don't have a reason to. I said, if I see one, I'll shoot it because I know you don't want them on your property. But if I don't, then I will just keep deer hunting. So I'm I'm sitting there deer hunting, and quite a while goes by, and it's right when it's getting light enough that you can see, and light enough that everything, you smell the fresh air coming in, and all of a sudden I hear a noise. But I described it to you the other day. It's not like a common scream noise. I'm gonna try and do it here for you in a minute, but like I said, doesn't give it justice. If anybody's ever seen Planet of the Apes, the newer ones with Andy Serkis and them playing Caesar, the giant ape, the first one where he gets up and he says no. He says no. It literally kind of sounded like that, but he obviously wasn't saying no. He was it was just it kind of sounded like this. It sounded like no, something like that, but much louder, much more advanced, and much more deeper. And I could hear it was a whiles away, but I didn't know how to react or how to do anything. So I automatically get on our walkies. We all carry walkies with us because it's just the way we do it. It's black. Technically, it's still black bear country. And as I was telling you earlier, there's mountain lion out there too. People will say there isn't, but we've seen them. We know they're there. I mean, it's just like everything else that they say isn't there, but it's there. And basically, I go on the walkie-talkie, and almost as soon as I go on, I hear Kenny going, go, leave, run, and he's just really crazy. And I was like, wow, I don't understand what's going on here. I don't know, was he getting attacked? Is he getting hurt? What's going on? So I, of course, get down out of my tree. See, I never listen to anybody, really. But I definitely wasn't going to listen to him. I wasn't going to leave him behind. At that time, he had a kid, a little girl, and he was, happily married. And so I was like, screw it, I'm not leaving him. I don't know what's going on. He could be being eaten by a mountain lion, or a bear could be attacking him or something. I don't know. So I started running down the trail towards where he was. I mean, as I'm running, I'm just thinking about what could possibly be happening to him. And until I collide right into him. And like I said, he's 6'4". I'm 5'10", 5'11", and I was 15 at the time. So we collide. I go flying backwards. He kind of stumbles a little bit, and he grabs me by the scruff of my neck, very military-like, and pushes me forward and says, "Get your ass moving." And so, of course, I do, and we're just running. And I said, what's going on? Don't ask questions. Just keep moving. So finally we get back to the lodge, and it's like I said, it's still like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. It's pretty early yet, but he didn't care. He threw us right in the lodge. He starts putting stuff up against windows. He starts pulling out some of his pistols and all sorts of nonsense. And I'm going, what the hell is happening? This is insane. This is crazy. If there's something out there, why don't we try and get to our cars and leave? Oh, he wasn't having that. He said, no, we're going. We're staying here, and we got to stay here. I'll explain in a little bit. Just help me get this place a little more safe. Safe from what? But he prepares this. I forgot to mention. I apologize. This is a big part of the story. Whilst we were running away from whatever he was running from, the trees were just exploding around us. I mean, that's a big thing to leave out. I apologize. It was just exploding around us, as if something was jumping in them. But like I was telling you the other day, here we have very, very thick, big spruce pine trees, and they're just huge. They're like 80 feet tall. Nothing like you guys have in Washington or in California, like the redwoods or anything, but big enough that they can hold something. And I see branches there that are probably about, I don't know, a foot thick with some spruce trees, pine trees. And whatever was happening is we would start running, and then all of a sudden the trees would just explode. Like I said, I was telling you, we turkey hunt up here too, and turkey like to roost up in the trees. And when they jump out of the trees in the morning, when we're hunting for turkey on the ground, they'll jump out on top, and you'll hear a giant thud, and it's literally them jumping out of the trees. And I think that's loud in the morning, but this was nothing compared to that. I mean, this wasn't jumping out of the trees. This was almost like jumping from tree to tree to tree. and it was just these huge thuds, and the trees were bending and crunching. I didn't see anything. I didn't see a face, or a body or anything. All I saw was these trees basically crunching under mass amounts of weight. Because, I mean, I've climbed these trees since I was young, and they don't move. When I'm climbing them, they don't move. They don't do anything. They just, even Kenny I've seen climb them, and they don't react to our weight because it's nothing for what they can withstand. And basically, this just kept happening until we got towards the edge of the property. These trees were just exploding with something jumping inside them. I could see a dark shadow between the trees, but it wasn't anything crazy. It's just a mass, really. Anyway, then, like I said, skip back to this part of the story. We were inside of the cabin, and we stayed there the whole night. I mean, we cooked, we ate, we did things. But Kenny was always at that door, always waiting for something. Don't know what, but was waiting for something. And he finally sat down and started talking to me. All right, what's going on? He goes, listen, I want you to understand everything I'm about to tell you is the way I saw it. It's true. I swear on my children. And he never swears. He's never had to do anything to me to swear, because he's a very believable guy, everything he always says. So he says, I was just attacked by a monkey. And I said, you were attacked by a monkey? Yeah, pretty much. And he goes, but it wasn't a normal monkey. He goes, it was huge. He goes, it was almost twice my height. It was gigantic. Twice your height, huh? Yeah. Okay, Kenny, well, let's hear what you have to say. So he goes on to say that he was hunting for coyote, and he was in a blind. Now, coyote blinds are usually, sometimes they're white if you're like hunting in the snow, but this was a brown one that kind of looked like dead foliage and stuff like that, because it was November. The trees were not full. That was a very good thing to have for coyote hunting, because coyote, they're dogs. They see you. They know. They just like if you're walking past a dog, they're harder to hunt. They're more intelligent animals. And well, he was sitting there, and he said, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he heard a giant thud, like two pine trees cut one down, and they just fell. After that, he started hearing these loud thuds, like almost like giant footsteps. Of course, he wasn't going to leave where he was. He was still hunting. He didn't know what was going on, until all of a sudden his blind was ripped out right from over top of him. And I was telling you the other day that he looked forward, because from the way it was pulled off, it looked like somebody was pulling it off of him, and from the front. And when you can tell when somebody's pulling something off of you, it looks like something from the front is just grabbing. And well, he of course looked front to see what this was, had his gun ready, everything like that, but there was nothing there. And he turned in the back, and there was nothing there. And he was very distraught by this, and didn't understand. So he kind of turned around, looked around, nothing was there. Then he turned towards the trail, and out of nowhere, he was kicked in the back and pushed to the ground. Face in the dirt, everything just stuck on top of the ground, and just hearing this violent breathing, this violent, nasty anger behind him. That's all he could say. It was like a mass of anger, because up to this point he hadn't seen anything. And while he was down for a little while, for about maybe 2 minutes, he said he was on the ground. He finally got the courage to turn around. Now, mind you, all he had on him was his normal hunting rifle that he carries, and a .22 pistol. I mean, that was just in case a coyote or a bear came, just shoot it off, and you might scare him and run away. .22 pistol, you can't really hear that well, even when a lot of times when you're shooting it right in front of you, it sounds. There are air pistols that sound almost as loud as some .22 pistols, and this one was a real old one he had. But anyhow,
were you guys bow hunting?
No. I wasn't bow hunting. I'm not a bow hunter. He is a bow hunter too, but no, this was past the bow hunting season. Bow hunting season is October in New York. So, he was hunting with a rifle and I was hunting with a shotgun. But he had another pistol on his side just in case that he always carries. Like I said, he's former military, former police SWAT. So he's a very prepared man. But anyhow, he kind of turns around, and the first thing he sees is a big mass of black fur, essentially, in the bent down position. And by bent down, I mean like on your knees, like you would be if you were looking at a track, on literally just on the balls of your feet and your hands on the ground looking. And this thing was looking. And the first thing that he really, really saw in detail were hands, which of course made you think, wow, because if you look up and all you see is a massive black fur, I mean, you're going to go, oh God, I'm getting attacked by a bear. I'm getting mauled by a bear. Oh my God. No. These were hands. Big, huge, gigantic hands. And then, of course, he continued to dare to look up even more, and he saw a bare chest. No hair, no fur, just a giant, huge, muscular version of a giant barrel chest. And then he continued up to a face, which had its gigantic canines and teeth bared, looking down right at him. Which, I mean, he's 10 feet away from this thing, and he's looking at it, and he just sees the biggest teeth he's ever seen in his entire life, looking down at him. And this is a guy who owns mastiffs. He's owned Saint Bernards, and they have big teeth. He says these teeth are 3 times the size of that. They were gigantic. They looked very blocky but human-like, except for the canines, which looked very ape-like. And he said that the face was just mongoloid looking. It looked like a different kind of ape, like an ape he'd never seen before at any zoo or in any documentaries or anything like that. And which I was telling you the other day, when you picture a body of someone explaining this, you just picture like a giant human. You picture a giant human like body with fur, but it wasn't like that. He said the way the muscles work, the way everything works is completely different the way it looks. He goes, it just looks like a massive wall of muscle. He goes, literally, its arms look like they're the size of your torso. He goes, it's just gigantic. It's meant for strength. It's meant for power. And he, of course, after looking at this thing for a couple seconds, he started backing up, which infuriated this creature. He said this creature looked at him like he had done something incredibly wrong to it, like he had tried to attack its young or something. But he then started just moving back real quickly, which I think moving quickly or moving back in any kind of way, probably made this thing very aggressive. So, of course, this thing grabbed him by his hand, as Kenny said, started at his ankle and ended where his knees came, like that's how big his hand was. It engulfed his complete calf, overlapping this thing's thumb over his ankle, and just started dragging him and dragged him a couple 100 feet before Kenny could get to his pistol, where he shot a few rounds off at it, supposedly hitting it in the shoulder. He said it didn't really even feel like it made contact. He said we thought what pissed it off more was the noise that the gun was making, which I couldn't even hear the gun going off. All I heard was it. He said then that's when it made a giant like yell, not a scream, just a complete yell. And which I heard, which is when I started contacting him. He said, and then this thing progressed to just freak out, start hitting the ground, bashing itself against the trees, hitting itself, like hitting its thighs and just bashing and being completely pissed off, which is when Kenny made his escape, leaving pretty much everything, leaving his rifle, leaving everything. And that's when we made contact and ran into each other. And of course, I looked at him. He's retelling the story. And I go, "You sound insane. You sound crazy." You know, I'm a 15-year-old kid. I'm 21 now, but he's a 15-year-old. I was a 15-year-old kid, and he's looking at me telling me this. And I'm like, "You must be trying to pull my." And he's, you know, commonly a jokester with things, but I mean, I could see in his eyes he definitely saw something that changed his life. But anyway, throughout that night, and we're talking about it more and more, and that's when it started getting around like 8 o'clock, screaming started, and it just kept going and going, and it sounded real close to the like where we were. It couldn't have been more than a mile, less I would say. Just started screaming all night. The common screams you hear in like the Sierra Sounds and other clips you played on your show sounded like a woman screaming. And it did that all night until we finally decided that it was enough. We made our leave in the morning, and things in his life haven't gotten a lot easier. Like I told you, he became kind of obsessed with the outdoors. Not that property, mind you. He actually sold that property about a couple months later. Him and his wife were going through a lot of problems because he basically became obsessed with going outside and hunting and going in the woods. And just wouldn't leave. I mean, he was obsessed. There's no other way to say it. Obsessed with being out there in the woods. And his wife said, "This is enough. You know, I can't do this anymore." And she got a divorce, and Kenny went into a very, very deep depression, where a lot of people didn't see him for a long time because he was just in the woods all the time, or if he wasn't in the woods, he was drinking, and he just went into a deep depression until he met his current wife and had another child, and finally kind of found that balance between his obsession of being in the woods and life. But he doesn't talk about it. I try and bring it up, and it's a complete shutdown. He doesn't want to hear anything about it. I haven't told anybody beside you and a few select friends that don't even know Kenny. But it's that thing. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want it mentioned, and he just wants to leave it alone. But like I always said, I found it very odd that not a lot of people, even people who don't get attacked, they become very, very scared and very apprehensive of going back into the woods. But it was quite the opposite for him. It was almost like a obsession psychosis. It was just very strange.
Yeah, it's either one way or the other, I've noticed with people. Either they want nothing to do with it, they never step foot in the woods again, or you'll find where they'll become completely obsessed with it and they have to see it again. I think it's interesting how it rips the blind off, kicks him, knocks him to the ground, and then they're kind of at a face-off. When he was describing the face to you, how did he describe it? Did he say it looked more human or ape? I know you talked about the teeth, but I mean, how did he describe it to you?
Well, he told, the word he used was mongoloid. When I think of mongoloid, I think of a Neanderthal. But he went into more vivid detail because, of course, this had just happened. He just kept rambling and rambling and rambling as much details as he could after this happened to him. So, of course, I listened. He said basically you could see that the head was elonged. It was an elonged head. It wasn't a normal skull like mine or yours. He said it was like an ape skull. He said the lips and a lot of the face was very chimpanzee-like, but a different kind of chimpanzee, more like a wider-faced chimpanzee. He said, but you could see the wrinkles. Of course, it had the gray skin. That's very common and everybody talks about. But he said that the face was just very pushed back in a different way. Pushed back, almost looking, having a kind of autistic look to it. I mean, he didn't use the word autistic, but he basically said that it looked like something was wrong with it. But very, very, very big features in the face. A big brow ridge too. He'd explained that the ridge in the forehead was just massive. But it had hair like we do. He said it almost looked kind of like some kind of hairstyle, not like anything that could be cut by humans. But I mean, like he could see colics. He could see where the hair was growing from in the head. He said that it had like a messy hairstyle. He didn't really talk about facial hair that much, but he did say that it had hair on its head, and you could see little ears. They weren't big; they were quite small, actually. Of course, he explained the teeth. He saw the tongue in great detail. He saw the tongue. The tongue, he said, was just massive. It looked like if you just took your hand and made like a salute hand and just wiggled it around. He said that basically was the size of the tongue. The tongue, and it was.
Did he mention the color of the tongue by chance?
Yeah, he did. Bright pink, like bubble gum almost.
Interesting.
Yeah, he said that it was very bubblegum like. Basically, that it looks weird. It didn't look like our tongue's kind of bubblegum looking. He goes, but this is like if you took Hubba bubblegum and wrapped it around your tongue. He goes, after you chewed it a while, that's what it looked like. He doesn't know if it was because his mouth was opened and it was enraged and maybe it was blood in the tongue. He doesn't know. He said, but it just looked purple. It just looked pink like bubblegum.
The other part I thought was interesting when you and I were talking the other day is he had mentioned almost the 4 canines in the sense of like when a chimpanzee opens up. Did he go into any more details about that? Were they extremely pronounced, or did he talk about that?
Yeah, they were pronounced. Like I said, the creature never really closed its mouth for too long. I mean, the only time it closed its mouth is it looked like he said when it was, because saliva was dripping. I told you that the other day too. Saliva was dripping out of this thing's mouth, and it would kind of like. He said it would kind of like slurp, like go like that to get the saliva out of its mouth essentially, or swallow it rather. And he said that the teeth did go back up into its face and its mouth and everything. But he said they weren't pronounced. They were very, very long, a lot longer than ours. And it almost like they didn't make sense with the rest of the teeth like our teeth do. Like we have canines that are very, very, they fit our face, and it's almost like these didn't fit his face. Almost like these were just like his face. Like if he had a closed mouth, that they would push the face forward, like in a way. Like if you have a like fake vampire teeth on. For Halloween, like how they push your mouth forward. He goes, that's how it would almost kind of appear to look. So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. The interesting part is the way he said when it looked at him, he had the impression like he had done something wrong, personally wrong to this thing. And it makes you wonder, maybe someone else had popped off a shot or was in a hunting blind, and he got to pay the price for someone else's actions. So as it's dragging him off, he shoots it. At that point, doesn't let go.
Yeah, he said what happened was that he didn't see any blood or anything like that, but he knew that he had hit it in some way, but that had done a little effect. What really made it pissed was the noise. And once he heard the noise a couple times. I mean, this wasn't like a boom, and then he stayed for a little bit, see what the gun did. It was boom, 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 boom. I mean, he was scared. He was trying to get this thing to let go of him. I mean, this thing let go right when it heard the noise of the gun, but was pissed, and just kind of went into this furious, this furious, I guess you could call it, meltdown. I mean, that's the best way that he described it.
Yeah, and that's the part that interests me is after he shoots it bangs his fist against the ground and, kind of has like a tissy fit after. Yeah. Which is common. I mean, I hear that from witnesses, witnesses that run into them. I've spoken to witnesses in the past that described the exact same thing, almost like it was a child throwing a tantrum or like an autistic child throwing a tantrum. That's kind of how it acted. It wasn't like a normal monkey or a normal ape or like a human. It had its own way of throwing a fit. Did he ever tell you, hey, I think it was Bigfoot, hey, I think it was Sasquatch, hey, I think it was, what was his impression of what he actually ran into? I know you had mentioned Neanderthal before. Yeah,
he said Mongoloid, but the only thing he ever said that it was a big monkey. A big monkey, he said. It definitely not a bear, definitely. Big monkey. That's all he ever said. He never said Bigfoot. He never said Sasquatch. He just said big monkey. And that kind of stuck with me, was big monkey, just the way he said, big monkey, big monkey. So I was like, okay, he's definitely seen a big monkey. What that is, I don't know quite yet. But then when he explained, I was kind of more, I guess you could say, understanding of what he was seeing. And at the end, you know, throughout all the stuff that happened, I mean, all I really saw was something huge jumping through trees, a giant yell that I had never heard before ever, and basically the screams at night. And that was enough to make me go, okay, well, bear can't jump through trees like that. Mountain lion can jump through trees, but I've seen mountain lion here, and when they jump through trees, it's the same as like when I jump through trees. They wait to say a mountain, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't affect the tree really, because that's how grounded and old that these trees are. So for me, it was kind of like, all right, well, either he saw a big monkey or what? I don't know. And the only thing that makes sense is what he said. And of course, in the way he's become obsessed with the being in the outdoors, I've become sort of obsessed with reading and researching, and of course, listening to this podcast, which is the best thing out there, in my opinion, man. And just becoming involved in kind of trying to talk to other people who may have had sightings in my area, you know, trying to understand what they have gone through, and just trying to get information. Like I was telling you the other day, the most important thing in everything we do as human beings is getting as much information as we possibly can. Even like some people might say, oh, well, don't you think listening to those podcasts about those encounters, don't you think that gets a little monotonous? They're the same? No, because none of them are ever exactly the same. They all change. You can all learn something from it. And that's really kind of been my whole thing is learning, trying to understand why these things happen, why we don't see it. And I told you the other day as well, and I keep saying that, I apologize, is that while we're at work, you know, people would go, oh, there's no way there could possibly be a giant thing like that, and we would never know. No possible way. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever that we can't see this thing on a normal basis. Well, people do see it on a normal basis. And beside that, we're living our daily lives. We're going to work. We're doing our thing. We're waking up at what time we do. Half the time, a lot of us don't even see woods at night. Don't, know that don't go in the woods. Don't know that there's even deer around, nonetheless, this thing. And like I said, just think right now, while we're sitting here having this conversation, while I'm driving down a city road right now, there is something gigantic and massive out there in the woods, walking around, doing whatever's on its agenda to do, and just existing. And unfortunately, every now and again, we as human beings clash with it. I mean, that's really it, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting, too, because, you gather a lot. You're right. No encounter's the same. And you do gather a lot of information from talking to witnesses. Mm-hmm. It's like on the last show, I had just barely mentioned for like 10 seconds about this guy I talked to in Virginia who saw this huge white, what he thought was a polar bear.
Yeah, I heard
that. He said it had a tail. And, yeah, I just barely mentioned it. I mean, him and I talked a couple of weeks back, and I just barely mentioned it. Well, a guy emails me today, and they've been giving his dad crap for, I don't know, the last year or so. His dad said he saw what he thought was a huge, this is in California, huge polar bear. And his dad said until he drove up on it, he realized it wasn't a polar bear. It was more of a wolf-like creature, but the size of it, he thought maybe a polar bear got loose it was in Texas. Maybe he thought a polar bear got loose. So I think you're right. As we all talk, we all share what we've seen, what we've heard, kind of put pieces of the puzzle together. And there's people out there that aren't as lucky as your friend were, that get dragged off, that just vanish. They're never heard from again. No one knows what happened to them. And I think that these things are responsible. I really do. I not in every case, obviously, but there is a portion of missing people that are directly related to these creatures. When you guys were out that night, were you guys staying in tents, or did you go back to a cabin when you were hearing all the screaming?
We were in the cabin when we were hearing all this screaming. It was 8 o'clock at night. We were barricaded inside the cabin. And then morning finally hit, and we got out of there. But like I said, he sold that property 2 months later, and his excuse to his wife was, "It's just boring. I've had it for 20 years. I don't really want to, I've hunted there. I just want something new." And that was his excuse. And she went with it. But that, that it was intense for me, even that. And looking at him, and at first I was like, "Oh yeah, this thing grabbed you and did this. Okay, yeah, it did. Did it hurt? And he took off his shirt, he showed me his leg, and he had visible bruises, man. He had visible black and blue bruises from where this thing grabbed him. Of course, they weren't really shaped like this. He had tons of clothes on, so, it was November, as I say, and winters in New York are not fun. And he said this, he said it grabbed me, and this is where it grabbed me, and I will, I'll show you, pull my pant leg up, and it had bruises. He had bruises. He had marks on his back from where this thing had kicked him. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I told you that he did see its feet, and he thought it was very odd that this thing with the feet it had, because it had giant feet like you normally see, like you would normally hear about. He said it was very odd that this feet didn't have feet that would be climbing up a tree because of all of the fact that he had seen it, that he had heard it jump out of a tree, that after this happened, when he turned back, he assumed that it had gone up in a tree, and then while he was running, this thing was jumping from tree to tree following him. He goes, I think it's very odd that it didn't have like little feet, like just the four toes and then the thumb that grabs onto limbs, because I thought it was very weird. He goes, until I really started thinking about how massive its upper body was. He goes, I think this thing literally just grabs a branch and chucks itself up into a tree. And that's how it works. He goes, and I asked him, well, did you see, does this thing crawl on its all fours? He goes, I never saw it crawl on its all fours. He goes, but with the way the body was and how much longer the arms were, he goes, it damn well could.
So he was thrown off because the feet looked human? Is that kind of what he was saying? Yeah.
They looked human. They looked much wider and more massive than ours, of course. But he said that this thing looked human. He even told me he went back to try and find tracks and everything like that, but there was nothing. There was nothing that he could see or anything. And I told him, you're insane for going out there without. But he really wasn't out there alone. He had his father-in-law was out there. A bunch of his buddies were out there with him, and they all were armed and everything. And he never saw anything after that. He was kind of because you halfway assume after this kind of thing happens that you're going to walk back to the spot it happened, and this thing's going to be there waiting for you, or it's going to jump out, and all your friends are going to see it, and they're going to know it's real. But it didn't. He wasn't as visibly.
Yeah, it never happens like that.
No, it never happens like that. Like the John Green and Renee DeHinden, and they thought right after the Patterson film came out that they were going to go find this creature, right in the backyard, right? They were going to go right to the same area, and they were going to find it, and they were going to bring it in, and it would be a done deal, and they would be, scientific wonderful scientists, and it just didn't work out that way. Because that's not how these creatures are. It's not how they operate. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I mean, it's a very fascinating story, and I kind of feel for your friend. I mean, I can imagine what he kind of went through afterwards of seeing something like this, and the depression and the obsession. And I know he's law enforcement, doesn't really want to come on the show now anymore. And, it's nice people get to a point where they have moved past it. You never really move past it, but you trick yourself into thinking you've moved past it and you're no longer have to deal with this. But I guarantee you that when he goes to bed at night and he closes his eyes, he's still dealing with this on some level.
Well, yeah, like I said, 2 tours in Iraq, most people thought that the reason he was having these problems and wanting to be in the woods all the time was because we're pretty sure that he killed people overseas, and we don't know, we don't ask him, but they're pretty sure that that's what happened, and they think that that's what bugs him. But I know differently. I know what really bugs him. I know what really scares him at night. I mean, before this, he always told me, there's only one thing that scares me, Derek, and that's a crazy person with a gun pointed towards my family. But I know now that it's that, and it's this thing, and I know that it terrifies him, and it makes him afraid. So
yeah, no, and I can't blame him. And it's a good thing that you were there to kind of support him, and I would imagine that was a long night of hearing the thing out there screaming. Probably made you stop and really think, maybe this guy did run into a big monkey. I mean, I know you saw the thing jumping from tree to tree, but that must have been one long night inside that cabin, waiting for the sun to come up, you know.
Well, it was pretty crazy. It was pretty intense, and I mean, for me, it's been more of a learning experience. I'm sure if I would have gone through the experience he did, I wouldn't be on the show right now talking to you. But I'm also a lot smaller, so I may not gotten away as long. You know, like him, like you were saying, some people don't get away. I may have been that person not to get away. It makes you appreciate the woods more. It makes you appreciate your humanity. It makes you realize, yeah. Guess what? There's the only reason that they're not running the show on this planet is basically because there's less of them and there's more of us and we have guns. That's the only reason why.
Yeah.
I do believe they're intelligent, but like I said, I believe we're more intelligent, and that's why we have the upper hand in a lot of situations. But there are the situations where it's just primal to primal. It's just fist to fist, strength to strength, and those people, unfortunately, you hear about in David Pilates' books and on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to know your surroundings. Well, Derek, I appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing that whole encounter. I was fascinated the other night when you and I were talking, and I was thinking, man, I got to have this guy on the show and recount it. And I know your buddy can't be on for different reasons, but I appreciate you coming on and sharing them.
Oh man, I appreciate everything you do. I appreciate the show. I mean, I look forward to it every Monday when I go and work, and I get to listen to Fast Chronicles. And, you know, my friend at work that I got kind of obsessed with it right now. It's the same way, and we'll just sit there and talk, and we love it. We love hearing about the dog man and everything. It's just so fascinating. But I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm just going to keep listening, man.
Five, four, three, two, one.
Nathan, thanks for being here tonight, man. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
And if you would, for the audience, just kind of start from the very beginning. Talk about what you were out doing and what you ran into, what you experienced. Walk right into the whole encounter.
All right. Well, it was back in 2011. I was with my Boy Scout troop. We go on these 50-mile backpacking trips every summer. And this is my second one I was going on. And we were in the Roan Mountain area on the border of North Carolina and Tennessee. And we were 3 days into the hike and camped out at night. And I got up from my tent to use the bathroom. And I had this strange feeling like I needed to walk up the trail a bit. And we were camped on the slope of the mountain. And the trail was up the slope from us. So I went up to the trail, I turned right, and I start walking. And I came up over a slight rise. And kneeling down, or squatting on the haunches on the trail in front of me, there was this huge creature. And he was squatted down. He was as tall as I was, which was about 5'8" at that time. And he was looking right at me, and we made eye contact. And this lasted for maybe 15 seconds. I couldn't tell. Then he looks off to his right, and right as he does that, I start hearing branches breaking, big, strong branches breaking, coming down the hillside towards us. And he looks back at me, and he made this, he yelled at me like a oh kind of sound. And it sounded to me like he was telling me to get the hell out of there. And that's exactly what I did. And he stood up, I stood up, and we both went off. He loped off, kind of almost floating through the woods, and I ran back to the campfire. And when I got to the campfire and got myself calmed down, I was gripping my hunting knife so hard that the blood stopped flowing to my fingers of that hand.
I would too, man. I'd be hanging on to any weapon I could at that point. Can you describe for the audience what you actually saw? What did the creature look like?
It looked like a man, but the shoulders and the body were thick. And the way he was squatted down, he had one fist on the ground, squatted on his haunches. And the head, it was, on a person's head, it only goes up so far past the eyes. And this guy, the head was up a lot farther than a man's was, and it was cone-shaped. And there was hair all over its body. It was like a dark, kind of wiry black hair. I couldn't really tell what color because the moonlight wasn't that great, but it was certainly dark hair, and you couldn't see skin through it. And when he stood up, the arms came down a little bit past its knees. It was real light on its feet, despite being that size. And when he stood up, he was at least twice as tall as I was. I'd say 10 or 11 feet.
What did you think you were looking at the time?
Well, when I first saw it, I thought I just walked up on a bear. But when I made eye contact with it, and it moved its head a little bit to look at me, I didn't know what I was seeing. And for some reason, when I walked up that trail, I had that feeling of, that it was like being somebody tied a rope to the center of my chest and pulled me up there. But I felt pretty calm looking at it. And when it looked at me and I realized it's not a bear, it wasn't like, it's not a bear, what the hell is this? I need to get out of here. It's like, oh, well, I guess that's not a bear. It wasn't a fear thing. So
you would say it was more kind of man-like when you saw it?
The face was. I got a clear look at the face. The eyes were set closer together. The nose was flattened, but still man-like enough. The mouth was more of a slit. There weren't any lips, and the entire face was covered with hair. The eyes were very dark and very intense. I didn't see any eye shine, but there was no light shining on them.
And when he vocalized at you, do you think that was a threat, or do you think something else was going on?
It sounded to me like he was trying to warn me, because right as he did that, I heard those branches breaking up the hill to my right. And, what happened was he looked up there, looks right back at me, and he mid that noise, and it hit me in the chest like a freight train. You could feel the sound, and I just had to get out of there. It sounded like he was telling me, you need to leave. So
for the audience listening, you heard something else coming down that you never got a good look at, but it sounds like something else was coming down. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Either it was a gigantic boulder rolling down that hill, or there was some kind of animal, I don't know what, coming down that hill. But I heard branches breaking and huge crashing footfalls in the leaves. I'm shaking right now just thinking about it because it really sounded, big. Like, in Virginia, you don't have anything bigger than a black bear, and they don't get bigger than 600-700 pounds. So, and whatever this was, it was breaking small, young trees, not saplings, but young trees as it came down the hill. Yeah, your encounter fascinates me. And when you and I were talking the other day, I was really fascinated by it because, and correct me if any of this is wrong, you're not going to hurt my feelings by any means, but it was almost kind of, the creature never really came towards you. The creature never really aggressively came at you. Even your impression at the time, which, when I listen to people tell their encounters, usually the witness's impressions are right on. And in your case, it wasn't a situation of, hey, if you come any closer, I'm going to kill you. It doesn't really sound like there was any aggression, almost like he was warning you to get out of there. The look on his face when he was looking at me, the expression was kind of like a concerned parent, like you just found some kid out in the middle of the woods, and you're worried, what the heck are they doing out there?
Yeah, so he didn't give you the stink eye. There was nothing like that.
No, I didn't at any time feel like he was going to, move towards me in an aggressive manner.
And so what happened next? So he did this vocalization. Did the creature get up and walk away, or were you already in a full sprint or turning around and heading back to your camp?
He got up and kind of loped off, something between a run and a jog, but very smooth, not like a man would. When we run, we bounce, and this guy wasn't bouncing. It was like he was on a level run, and I ran right. And once he got up, I figured, well, he's not going to help me anymore at this point. So I made my run for it. That was the fastest 100 yards I ever sprinted in the dark in the woods on the mountain.
Yeah, I bet. What made you? Why do you think you decided to walk down that trail that night?
I've done a lot of thinking about why I did, because I only had to walk maybe 15 feet to be behind the tree, but it was really like being pulled by a rope in my chest. That's the feeling what it was like. Like it was like a irresistible curiosity.
And you hadn't heard anything at that point, correct?
Nope. It was your average night in the woods, just crickets, and I think there was an owl hooting earlier that night I was listening to as I was falling asleep. So, nothing out of the ordinary.
Now, when you go back to camp, do you tell anyone about this encounter?
No. The last 2 days of the trip, I didn't really talk to anybody. I was shaken up. I stayed quiet, and even my scoutmaster, I remember he asked me, something wrong? Are you having trouble with the other boys or something? Because I wasn't talking. And I said, no, it's no problem. It's no problem. But, I wasn't chatting, playing grab ass like I usually was at that age. So I just kind of kept quiet and went home. And a few days later, I was my old self again. But it really shook me.
Yeah, no, I would imagine. I mean, God, that would have shook me up, especially when you run into it. But it's an interesting encounter because a lot of times when people come in contact with these creatures like how you did, and I don't know if you caught it off guard, it's sitting in the middle of the trail. I think it's interesting how you say it was kind of sitting on its haunches, because I've talked to a lot of other witnesses that have seen that, where that's exactly how they describe it. It wasn't sitting down like a man. It was kind of sitting on its haunches to where it could pop back up and come at you if it wanted to. But what's interesting about your encounter is there was no aggression in your encounter. It's almost kind of like the vocalization was like, go away, get away from here. There's something else coming down the hill, go away. And you would have known if there would have been aggression, that thing would have bluff charged you, would have stood up, it would have came at you. What was your impression as you were looking at this thing and it was looking back at you? You had mentioned concerned parent. Do you think, as you looked into this thing, what was your feelings just kind of looking at this thing? Besides, what the hell is this?
I mean, it was kind of like, there was a certain amount of awe at the sheer size of it. But there was also curiosity. When I was a little kid, I read this little kid's book about a kid who goes out in the woods trying to help his dad find Sasquatch or something. And so I knew a little bit about it, but I never took any stock in it. And seeing it right there in front of me, it was kind of like whoa, what? But it was, I feel like it was surprised but pleased to see me, and I was surprised but somewhat pleased to see it. Like it was a very positive encounter, and I've heard a lot of encounters. I've listened to your show quite a bit, and a lot of the encounters are very negative. A Sasquatch throwing rocks at people, or chasing them off a trail, or running them down for picking huckleberries after dark. But this one looked like he didn't mind being around people, or at least me. I wasn't very threatening back then. I was a stick.
Yeah, almost like it was. It didn't seem like it was intimidated by it all by you coming down. And it throws me. One of the things I know I've lightened up a lot on people who say they've seen these things and they say that they're people. where you'll talk to a lot of groups where they'll say, "Oh, these things are people," and I used to be like, "Oh, no, you're wrong." But the more and more encounters I listen to, the more and more encounters, you have to listen to what people are saying. And I know in your encounter, as you and I were talking and we hung up the other day, I was thinking, not only is there intelligence, but there was almost kind of somewhat compassion in your encounter. Because whatever was coming down that hill, I mean, he could have growled at you, he could have roared at you, he could have easily have scared you off. But that wasn't really the vocalization he did. It was more of a, I don't know, how would you describe it?
It was like when you're crossing the road and your dad yells, "You get out of the road, because there's a car coming." It was that kind of thing, It was it was that kind of, get out of here, something bad's going to happen. And those words almost formed in my head when he made that noise.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I always find it interesting, our perceptions of these things. I was just talking to a guy the other day, and he was being dragged off by one, way different than your description. I almost think he ran into a different type, but he had shot it. And the guy that was walking up on the scene, his buddy that he was hunting with, he said, that scene in Planet of the Apes when it goes, "No!" when it yells no, He said that's almost kind of what he heard, almost kind of a no. And, I don't know if that's what actually it was saying or if that was his impression, but I think the witness's impressions are important when you're talking to people. Has it affected you at all as far as going back out? I mean, did it worry you at all going back out?
It did a bit. But, I'm still an avid backpacker. And I'm just starting to hunt now. I do black powder hunting. I'm actually about to go out to the same, I'm going to go back to the same spot this summer when I finish up my semester of classes. We'll see how that goes. But, I'm scared because of whatever was coming down the hill. I also feel a bit safer in the woods knowing that something, whatever that was looking out for me when I was a kid. Because I really do feel it was looking out for me.
Yeah, and be careful. Well, one question I want to ask you, what state did this happen in? Just out of curiosity.
Tennessee-Virginia border, right on the borderline, about a mile from it, in the northwestern corner or northeastern corner of the state of Tennessee.
Well, be careful when you go out. When you go back out, please be careful. The one that you ran into may not be the one you run into next time. You know what I mean? You can't judge every encounter with these things the way you first run into them. I know, like Bob Garrett's a perfect example of that. The ones he ran into in Colorado, he thought were kind creatures, very gentle, not trouble at all. Then he gets to Texas and realizes, wow, these things are monsters. So you never really know the kind you run into. It's kind of the old pit bull theory. I have a pit bull. I love my dog to death. But just because I can walk up and tackle my dog and I'm not going to get hurt doesn't mean I'm going to go up to someone else's pit bull and play rough with it, or, because they might just, you know what I'm trying to say. I guess I'm just rambling, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, please be careful. Realize not every one of them is going to be like that. Not every creature you run into is going to have that mentality of, hey, I'm looking out for you. I would say most of the time that's not what you run into. But you do run into it from time to time. They're not all monsters. And I say that on the show, and I try and get that through to the audience when I talk, that, if most people think that I'd put a bullet in every single one of them I saw, and that's not true. There are good ones, there are bad ones. It kind of depends on what you run into, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like the Sasquatch are numerous enough that either as individuals or groups, they have different personalities, maybe even different cultures across the country. So you could run into a group of them that are, man-eating, take women and girls like the Native Americans would say. Or you could run into a group or an individual like the one I ran into that was looking out. I almost hope to see it again. I've always wondered what it'd be like if I did. I don't. The thing is that I feel like if I did, it wouldn't be too interested in hanging around, you know. But I feel like I owe it something, whatever it is.
That makes sense to me. I mean, I get what you're saying, and, you know, I would probably have a different feeling if I had an encounter like yours towards them. I might be a little bit more not so hard-hearted towards them if I had your type of encounter. So I definitely get what you mean. But, you know, keep in mind, too, it's like I tell people, treat it like you would a grizzly bear. Treat it just like you would the exact same way a grizzly bear. Now, are all grizzly bears killing machines? No, they're not. I saw a video on Facebook the other day of this lady that her mother-in-law was in a wheelchair. They were sitting on the beach, and here comes a grizzly bear and her cubs walking down the beach. And I'm thinking, and this lady is an idiot, because I'm thinking, I hope she's not listening, but I think she's an idiot. I'm thinking, get your mother-in-law slowly back out of the area, give the grizzly mother and her cubs room to go by, and hope to God that she doesn't turn on you, and basically say a prayer and hope for the best. Well, what was interesting is she never moved. She just sat there. And she filmed the whole thing. This grizzly bear walks right past grizzly bear mom and two cubs, walk within probably 10 feet, and they just keep on going. The mother grizzly bear doesn't even flinch, just keeps walking down. And so I guess I tell you that to say this. You never know what the temperament, you never know the... if someone had told me that and I hadn't seen the video, I would have called BS on the whole thing. But after watching the video, I was shocked. I was like, wow, I can't believe that this grizzly bear didn't kill this woman. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is the same thing applies with these creatures. You have to be careful because you don't really understand what the boundaries are. You don't really understand what, you wouldn't think smiling at a gorilla would piss it off, but it does because they look at it as a sign of aggression. So you never know really when you're going to cross the line. And when you cross the line with these things, you're in a very bad position. But I don't blame you, man. I get what you're saying. I'd probably want to get back out there too and run into it again. Who the hell knows what was coming down that hill? Something probably bigger and badder and worse than what you ran into. And he was just kind of telling you, get back to camp, get the hell out of here.
You know, one of my theories is, you know, I'd heard this I think it was Chickasaw legend, that the hairy men and the dog men were at war for whatever reason, and the hairy men lived in the mountains to the north of the Chickasaw, which would put them pretty much square in the Appalachian Range, and the dog men lived in the open land to the south. And I was thinking, you know, maybe it was a dog man coming down that hill after the Sasquatch or after me, because, you know, it was too big for a bear. You know, I spend a lot of time in the woods. I've run into a lot of bears. Black bears aren't going to come charging down a hill at you unless you're kicking their cubs or something crazy like that, you know.
Yeah. No, it takes a lot to piss a black bear off. And most of the time they want nothing to do with you. I mean, they literally really want nothing to do with you. And they're usually gone. They're not going to be coming down the hill. So who knows what was coming down that hill? I've heard those same legends. I've talked to a lot of Native Americans, and they talk about the Sasquatch and these dogmen. They have like a weird name for the dogmen. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but they have a strange name for them.
It's something hard to pronounce.
It's something hard to pronounce. I can't remember what the name of it is off the top of my head. I'll have to write it down so I don't sound like a moron. But they do have a name for the dogman, but it's this weird. I don't even know how to. Anyway, but yeah, no, I've heard those same legends to where they don't get along. They're always at war with each other. And the legends that I've heard are usually down south. This is where I've heard those from some of the Native Americans. And they talk about them being physical beings. You know, sometimes when you talk to Native Americans, it's hard to, are they talking about the spirit world? Are they talking about, but they're very cut and dry when they talk about these two types of creatures, especially down south, as being physical beings and physical creatures. And yeah, man, what an amazing encounter. I bet it changed your life. And, I don't blame you for wanting to get back out there. Let me know when you go back out there. Let me know if you find any prints. Let me know if you find anything while you're out there. I'd love to do a follow-up with you.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I'll come back with some pictures, and I'll take some pictures of the spot and everything for you.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see the pictures. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to share the encounter, with the audience and with me. And it's an amazing encounter. After you and I hung up the other day, I was thinking, I wonder what drew him out to go look for this thing, or what, not to go look for this thing, but what I mean is, I almost think there's something primal inside of us that we had at one time when these things were around that put us on high alert, that put us on, it's almost something wired in our brains that put us on this high alert. If that's what happened to you, I don't know, but it's a fascinating encounter, and I'm just glad that you had a halfway decent encounter instead of one that could have gone bad pretty quick.
Yeah, because that guy, he could have picked me up and plucked me limb from limb if he wanted to.
Yeah, and when you see him, you don't realize how, you being 5'8" at the time, and it's on its haunches just as tall as you are. It doesn't sound like much, but then after it stands up, you realize, wow, this thing's twice as tall as I am. This thing's a monster as far as size goes.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really hard to describe that to people, isn't it, until you see it?
Yeah, it's hard to really convey the sheer enormousness of something like that. Like, you've seen big animals before, elephants and everything, but to see something in the form of a man, standing on two legs, that's twice the size of you. It's intimidating, and it's awe-inspiring. It's I can't describe it really.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate you coming on, man. Let's jump to Eric. Hey, Eric, thanks for coming on the show, man. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Not a problem, Wes. Thanks for having me, brother.
If you would, for the audience, just kind of walk right into your encounter. Tell us what happened, what you experienced, and what you saw.
Yeah, sure. That's not a problem. Basically what it was is I was on recovery from a surgery, and so kind of to get to my little sanctuary, as I call it, my aunt lives south of Buffalo, New York by about, 25, 30 minutes, and it's really wooded down there, and it's like in the ski region near Kissing Bridge and all that. So excuse me, I went down there with my kids, my son and my daughter, and then the girl I was dating at the time, her son came with me. So we're in the woods. I'm recovering 2 months after a knee surgery, so I wasn't too mobile, but it was just nice to be out there. This was March 1st of 2014. My surgery was January 3rd of the same year, so 60 days in, I was still recovering. And we're out in the woods. My daughter and I are the first ones out there, and there's a trail back behind their house. And we're, just enjoying the snow that was on the ground. And, of course, it's Buffalo weather, in the winter off Lake Erie. That's the snow belt. So we're down there just enjoying nature pretty much. And I kind of fell into a snow pile. Like the snow gave way underneath, of course, the bad knee goes into the snow drift. Well, I decided to go down, kind of roll into it type thing so I don't, hurt myself anymore. And my daughter got a kick out of it, so she brought a stick over to help me, like a walking stick type to stand up. So I get up, there's a little wooden bench somebody made on the trail, and I go sit on this, 2x4 bench and just kind of relaxing, just make sure my leg was working right, stuff like that. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we hear a wood knock. And it was a distinct, clear, like a baseball bat hitting a tree. So we look in a direction. I'm like, that's weird. Or maybe it's just, kids. There's some kids on this area where the houses are, and this kind of development where it's really nice actually. It's a very wealthy neighborhood, and there's an acre to acre and a half between each house, and they had to keep it wooded to live there. So didn't think nothing of it, and that was in a northern direction from our position. But then 5 minutes later, all of a sudden there's another very distinct, very clear wood knock. Again, so like a baseball bat hitting a tree. Now this came from behind us. So me and my daughter, we turn and look. Okay, maybe someone's chopping wood. Everyone's got wood burning stoves out in that part of West New York, and so I figured someone's cutting wood, or they're they add into their wood pile, stuff like that. 5 minutes later, same spot, position one. Pow! I'm like, okay, maybe it's kids in the woods hitting trees. We used to do it when me and my cousin were down there. And sure enough, 4 or 5 minutes later, position two. I mean, almost like clockwork, just pow. I'm like, okay, this is getting a little bit too coincidental. And position 1 goes again. Crack. I'm like, okay, now this is the 5th time. So I'm like, well, I see him do it on, watching the Bigfoot shows and Monster Class and all that. So I do a whoop noise. Didn't get any reply. But position 6, within about 4 or 5 minutes after I do it, there's the wood knock. I'm like, okay. So my son comes running out this time because they're getting their boots and stuff on. And the boys come running. My son's like, Dad, what's that? I'm like, shushing them. I'm like, Joe, we're hearing wood knocks out here. He goes, well, I just heard a whoop noise. I'm like, well, that was me. And sure enough, crack, there's another one. And this goes on and on and on for a good hour. Almost every 4 or 5 minutes apart, there's these distinct wood knocks. Pow, pow, pow. I'm like, okay, this is getting strange. I want to say it was like around the 12th wood knock. Position 2 hits twice. It was a distinct crack, crack. I'm like, okay, well, now that was different. And as soon as that one went, again, it's anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes between each wood knock. The dog across the road, I would say no more than, 100 yards, not even, maybe 75 yards from where we were standing. The dog gets into this really defensive, aggressive bark. And it's just like when a mailman walks up to your door, and the dog in the window starts going crazy. This dog just starts going nuts. And you hear the guy, all of a sudden you hear a guy's voice go, hey, get in here. Dog shuts up, obviously goes inside. When that dog went inside, 30 seconds later, crack. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. As soon as position 3 now cracked across the road, I'm like, oh, we're in an L-shaped ambush. I did 22 years in the Army. And I had point 1 to the north, point 2 to the south, and point 3 was to my west. I'm like, oh, this is not good. I got 3 of them here. And as soon as that thought popped in my head, I started gathering my kids back to my aunt's house. Now, we were only like 45 feet away, 50 feet away, so we weren't that far. So I gather them up, we get back to the house, we're on like pretty much the back porch. And as soon as we got to the porch, position 2, maybe a minute within the knock, position 2 knocks. 30 seconds later, as we're walking, we're looking at where point 2 is to the south of us. Point 1 knocks, and that's it. Now, my rookie mistake was, rather than me being on my cell phone all the time, actually sending and writing the report to the BFRO, and I was like at 1500, point 1 was in this grid azimuth, 1504, point 2 in this grid azimuth. I'm doing I'm calling on military targets pretty much, so an artillery strike. That's what I've done for 20 years, so that's the only way I could put it down. But I was like, very matter of fact, the time, when the knock was, how many knocks, the area it was coming from, what the weather was like, no wind, stuff like that. It was just going on and on and on and on. I wish I still had that report because that was very detailed on my end. Never heard back from them, nothing of the sort. And who knows, maybe they get a ton of reports. I'm not to judge them, or I'm not trying to put nobody down, but, stuff happens and whatnot. But I would give anything they had that report back, because that was just my eyes that day. I was pretty much in shock the rest of the evening from that. I didn't have a feeling of being threatened, but it's like, what? It's like something just jumped off of a page in a book in front of you and landed right there in front of you. Just crazy. Yeah,
that is crazy. Did you ever go back out to that area and take a look around, see if you could find footprints or anything like that?
I did go back a couple weeks later, and this was during the winter of 2014. We had that, we got some decent snow, and down there what it would do is it would snow, it would melt a little bit, it would snow, it would melt, snow melt, and there's a really distinct, like snowpack down there. So by the time we were down there, when this happened, there's no tracks to be found. We did go look, but I was very limited. So by the time I got out there, it was, I would say, mid-spring, so there's a little bit of snow. I really couldn't see nothing. But that day that we were down there, I sent you the pictures of that tree. It's literally, I measured it. It's 45 feet behind my aunt's back porch. It has a branch, and when you look at this branch, it was snapped, twisted, and pulled. And this branch is 12 feet off the ground. My son, I had him stand under for height reference, and he was 6 foot tall at the age of 15. This thing is like twice as tall as he is. I mean, it's 11 feet, 8 inches, I think, when I measured it, from the bottom of that branch to the ground. And there was no sign of that branch being on the ground. When we got the picture, when I took the picture, it was a fresh, clean break. A buddy of mine is an arborist here. He was in my Army National Guard unit. We were engineers. And he took a look at that branch, and he goes, that's not normal. He goes, that's not cut. He goes, that was like something grabbed it and ripped it down. Because you can see how it's like opened up and it's rolled. And I've heard Kumbo and Barron them talk about that all the time, too. So, of course, I found that out a couple years later when I started listening to their shows. But, I mean, it was just something I found strange, and gone back out there a few times, and I found some very interesting tree formations. Of course, with all the leaf litter up there with a lot of maples, it's hard to get footprints, but when the snow falls, I'll definitely be out in that area looking, because I did find a very interesting tree formation, I call it the upside-down delta, like a woven delta, because it looks like a pyramid. Or not a pyramid, but like a triangle, I mean. And I sent you those pictures, too. You had 2 law enforcement officers that found something very similar to that, and they had it on video. So that's definitely another area I want to go back and look at that and go up in those hills and down into the little draws or the hollers and stuff like that, and basically follow the creek line, the water, and see what happens down there.
And you actually went out in that general area driving, and you found a track line. Do you want to tell us about that?
Oh, yeah, the track line, actually, that was a lot closer to home. That one, now where my aunt lives in South Erie County there, it's, very hilly. You're starting to get into the hills to go into the Allegheny Mountains. Of course, our mountains are nothing like what they have out there out there in the west, I should say. But the track line I actually found almost exactly a year to the day later. I was working for AAA. That's when we had our polar vortex hit the East Coast, and we were like 30 degrees below zero, 20 degrees below zero. So me being for AAA, I was very busy with changing batteries, jump-starting cars, changing tires, pulling a lot of ditches, stuff like that, with typical AAA work. So my day off, I'm enjoying it. I had to go into the VA hospital to have them look at my knee. That's who did my surgery. So going to the hospital, or heading towards the hospital, I should say, I stop at a coffee shop. I get my iced cappuccino, and rather than fight to get on the main drag, which is Transit Road, to get on Millersport, I'll take the back way. I'll go downtown Walnut Creek Road. I'm driving, big, nice houses out that way, right along the creek on both sides of the road. Lots of, nice kept land between them, and they got a lot of woods behind them on both sides. I'm no more than, I had to be maybe at the most quarter of a mile from the main strip. There was a house, and as I'm driving by, I just happen to look over to look at the house. There are these distinct, I'm losing here. There are these distinct trackways that are across the front lawn, goes over the driveway, and comes to the road, or comes to the road and across, whichever way it goes. I see this, I hit the brakes, and now I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. So I hit my brakes in my Tahoe, I pull over to the side of the road, I got my 4-ways on. I'm like, I just did not see that. Click, click, go into reverse, I back up. I'm sitting in front of this person's house around 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30 around there. I'm looking like, this can't be real. So I'm looking at them, I'm like, those look very far apart. Now, when I was in the woods writing that report, rookie mistake number 1, when I finally realized what it was, I should have been recording these wood knocks as best as I could with my cell phone, either through a video or even, maybe with a recorder. Well, I back up. I'm thinking, okay, I want to look at these things, but how am I going to get out on this person's front lawn and measure these things? So I actually have my toolbox in the back of my truck. So I get my tape measure, and as I open up the back of my truck, my big yellow Carhartt AAA jacket sitting there. I'm like, I'll pretend I'm with the city or the town or, Department of Transportation, the highway. So I jump out, get my measuring tape, and I kind of run up the driveway real quick. And I measured the impressions, which they're 20 inches long by 10 inches wide. The trackway that went across the front lawn, the long part, those were 6 feet apart. They're anywhere from 72 to 74-inch strides, from either leading edge to leading edge or trailing edge to trailing edge, which way they're going. I made sure I measured the same spot on each. So if I'm looking with the track right in front of me, if it's to the right, I went from the tip of that right one to the tip of the next one over to me to the right, to that right side, far right side tip. So doing that, that's where I got the 72 to 74 inches apart. When I went to where on the other side of the driveway, between two trees, you can see they're 6 feet apart, but I measured those ones. Then there are two strides. One was 84 inches and one was 86 inches between each stride. So it was like between the trees, it took like two real big strides. And I'm looking like, okay, is this, now I'm trying to debunk it. Is this a rabbit jumping? So I think it could be. But there were no distinct rabbit prints in the bottom of these tracks. So I'm like, oh, okay. And then in the one picture I sent you, you can see where a small animal came up through the print after it was made. I'm just like, no. And of course, rookie mistake number 2, I did take the measurements. I have the tape measure in my truck right now. It's sitting in my center console, and I didn't take pictures of them. I was just nervous. I didn't want someone to say, hey, who are you? Why are you on my property? Stuff like that. So I was trying to get all this within a 10, 15-minute window, and then I just took off from there. Again, just like, okay, lightning does strike twice, so it definitely opened my eyes to a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff.
Especially when you find evidence, when you start finding evidence or you hear wood knocks, you start to find little bits and pieces of, outside of a sighting, you start to find and collect evidence. It really does open your eyes. Yeah, I was just talking with another guy about that. He was saying he didn't really buy into any of this until he had his encounter, and it really opened his eyes. I know he's looking into Dogman. He's looking into a lot of other things he would have never dreamed of looking into because he had a hard time buying into it. And I think once you open your eyes and kind of see what's going on, it kind of comes back full circle. And I know it came back full circle for you. You had something strange happen when you were a kid, or didn't you, Eric? And all of this kind of brought back memories?
Yeah, actually, it did. This is when I was telling you about it, this is where it comes full circle for me. So first we hear the wood knocks, and I'm just like struck by lightning. A year later, actually after the wood knocks too, a real quick story. We were camping with the Boy Scouts at my Scoutmaster's property down there, and he took the boys, because again, I'm still after my surgery. I'm basically maintaining the camp at the cabin, and he took the boys and the other scout leader, they took them for a hike. So the 2 leaders and like 6 kids are up in the woods, and they're, you can hear them chomping away and off and going up the hill. 40 minutes into their hike, I know they're like basically down by the one little creek he has on his property. I hear a very loud crack of wood, like a tree branch breaking or a tree falling down. And just like the day I heard the wood knocks, there was no wind. There were no animal sounds. There was not a bird, no crows, no movement of any kind of small critters. And usually out there's a lot of deer, a lot of rabbit, a lot of squirrel. So that was another little encounter. And then I was relaying all this information to my father probably about a year ago, and I'm telling him the stuff that, me and the kids have heard. And my son has been even to the one major Boy Scout camp, and he's heard whistles, wood knocks. 2 separate times, 2 different years, kids actually reported seeing something very large, black, muscular, like a wrestler or a bodybuilder, standing down, coincidentally, in the one campsite that they restrict now, down by the creek, Camp Red Jacket. So when I was relaying all this information to my father about what happened at my Aunt Marilyn's, that's his one of his older sisters, as I'm telling these stories, I'm telling about the footprints and the stuff that the kids have heard, this is where my boomerang effect comes in. All of a sudden it hits me. I've had this memory pop up every now and then. Like, why do I think about this? Why am I remembering when we saw that big deer at my aunt's house behind the tree? Why is it coming back into my head now all of a sudden? It's just, and this would just occur randomly throughout my years growing up as a teenager, when I was in the military. Why do I keep picturing this scene in my head? When I'm talking to Aunt Marilyn, my cousin Josh, we were about, I think I was 9 and he was 6. So we were young. And I used to love going to my aunt's house all the time. Always loved playing in the woods. Typical kid stuff. We had the toy guns. We're playing army. We're walking around with sticks. We're fighting swords. We're fighting these imaginary dragons and goblins and stuff like that. Just, kids being kids without cell phones and iPads, pretty much. So that's when imagination ruled the world. When we were down there, we were in the creek down behind the house, and at the most 150 feet from the back of the house, my aunt's house. And it does actually slope down to the creek. So we're down there, and I'm kind of crouched down. I'm turning the stones to look for salamanders and crayfish and, you know, stuff like that, maybe frogs, whatever we find down there. All of a sudden, my cousin, he's standing just to the left of me, and all of a sudden I hear him do that, you know, that gasp of like, what, you know, and I look up at him and I see where he's looking. I actually see a form of this dark, it was like a dark brown object, but it was tall. It was very tall, and I see it moving, going from peeking out to behind the tree. I see this. My cousin runs. I'm like, I'm not sticking around. I said, I just saw something huge and hairy. I'm right behind him. So we're running up this light little grade of a hill, and we're moving. And we get we go up the back porch. We're in the house. We go up the spiral staircase to my aunt's where the kitchen is on the second floor. And we go running in, and we're like, and he's yelling, Mom, Mom, Mom. I'm like, hey, Marilyn, you should see this. And we're just like, you know, two young kids were all hyped up. We're like, we couldn't believe what we just saw. And we're like, we just saw this big thing out there, this big, large thing. And I remember distinctly my cousin saying, this thing was bigger than Uncle Mike. Now, that's my father. He stands 6'5". So we're 9, 6 years old. 6'5" is like, you know, looking at Shaquille O'Neal for us. But when I went back out just a couple of months ago, I found the spot in the creek, same spot. I could see the same tree. And I remember looking over there. We went and measured that tree. This thing was up around the 8.5 to 9 foot range of the one branch. And as we were telling the story, I think my aunt knew what we were talking about, but she kind of, I don't know, manipulation would be the proper word, or guided our thought process, or I guess that'd be the same thing. But basically, she kind of, well, you guys saw a very large deer, right? You saw a big deer behind the tree, and then we looked, we're like, yeah, maybe, was that a deer? Yeah, I think it was a deer. So we're 9 and 6, we didn't know. And then she's like, well, why don't you guys stay in for lunch, go wash your hands, and, you know, you guys can go play, you know, downstairs, and, you know, you can get the board games out. So that's what we ended up doing. We never went back to the woods that weekend, which is basically their backyard, but she didn't let us back out.
Did you ever go back and ask your cousin or talk to your cousin about that incident?
No, actually, I've never brought that up to my cousin Joshua. It's, you know, I'll bring it up one of these times. I don't know if I need to get the courage to say it or what the deal is, but I want to talk to him, his sister, because I also want to talk to my aunt and uncle. I was just out there, like I said, just a few months ago, and it was, I don't know, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's wintertime. The sun's starting to set a little bit, and my aunt and uncle are like, well, you have a cell phone on you, right? I'm like, yeah, I got a cell phone. Why? Like, well, just make sure you have your cell phone on you when you're out in the woods. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, why? Why do you want to know if I have a cell phone? So I didn't go far. I just went down to the creek and just enjoying a little walk, enjoying the trees. I really wasn't looking for too much, but there was a distinct wood knock further out in the woods, and yeah, that was again, it's a very it's a productive site. You go down there, you see stuff. You will get interaction of some sort down there, because again, the dog, another dog across the road, I don't know if it's the same one, it started barking, not as vicious, but it was barking, and also you heard like a bit of a whimper noise. I'm like, uh-oh. So I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go back inside the house now. So
yeah,
it's
I don't blame
between where the Scoutmaster's camp is, well, his property, I should say, in Cuba, New York. I actually have some locals around there. I actually got the courage up to ask them there too, and they're like, well, Black Creek is known for sightings, and there's always action in Cuba, New York. We went the weekend before Easter. We were down there. We had a little camp out, and I was standing out there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of water. We went to dinner the night before at the one little barn grill, and a couple beers, a lot of water, some pops, stuff like that. And well, 5 o'clock, I'm out there. Mother Nature calls, and I hear two woo noises, and it sounded like Ric Flair was down the hill and across on the other one. And I'm like, oh, that's new. I'm like, I've never heard that before. I'm like, all right, I'm going back in the house, going back to bed. So, just very interesting one. It's very, very, it doesn't happen every time, but yeah, it happens.
Well, be careful when you're out, man.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my eyes are always open now. My head's on a swivel.
Yeah.
My head's always on a swivel in the woods now.
And I appreciate you coming on and sharing the experiences very much.
Oh, no problem, dude. No problem. Like I said, big fan of the show. I found you guys after I had the experience, and I used to watch the TV shows, and then once I started listening to you guys, and I mean, I have more stories too. I have one that stuff that's happened to my friend. I said, I told you one time we had something happen at the nuclear plant out near, and that's north of Rochester, New York. We're armed to the teeth. We have body armor on, and we're sitting out front with the National Guard as like a security force. And we had something happen to us where something pushed the back of our Humvee down. Me and Sergeant Diaz looked at each other. We jumped out. There's nothing out there, but we were right next to the wood line that was not too far from this nuclear plant. So I didn't think anything of it at the time, but after hearing how fast these things are, how strong they are, how they can crawl up on you, like basically low crawl like the military does. Whatever had the power to push that Humvee down, and I mean, it was distinctly pushing the back of a Hummer down. And this is the military grade one, the H1s, and just, well, civilian H1s. But, yeah, that was an eye-opener. I locked and loaded right then and there. I saw nothing. He saw nothing. We both went up each side of the vehicle. And that, to this day, still stumps me. Could it have been? Maybe. I don't know. But there's always, in those wood lines, that's where I always felt like I was being watched. I hated driving through that wood line to get to the other site that we had to monitor and patrol. I hated doing the dismount from there because you had to walk down, go over bridge, through the wood line to get to the shoreline of Lake Ontario. I never felt easy over there. That's where I always had, like, eyes on target, where now is a target. So that's still one that, I mean, right now I'm getting the chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, that is interesting. Like you and I talked the other day, I've talked to hunters and that have been out and have had experience that. I had one that actually saw a Sasquatch jump on the bed of his truck, and it dropped the shocks down, dropped everything down. He looked back, and it leaped off, and it was gone. It makes you wonder what that type of behavior is all about. Now, I would imagine, you wouldn't mess with two military guys out there. You guys are armed to the teeth, and in an H1, a person's not going to go jump on a person couldn't even drop down an H1 jumping on the back of it like you described.
Yeah, we tried. Me and Sergeant, first I jumped with full battle rattle. All it was just a big thud landing in the back of the Hummer. Then he climbed up to the rollover beam behind the driver's seat, the passenger seat in the front. We both jumped together. We did not make this thing move to, 6 to 10 inches. That the back end dropped, and we were just like, you actually felt it like pull you backwards. And then we kind of like went into shock. We're like, what? And we looked at each other, and we both busted out the door. We looked back first, saw nothing, and we came out the door. We were thinking maybe it was the next shift coming on, the overnight shift, the midnight to 8 guys, but nobody was out there. It was just me and Sergeant Diaz. Yeah, so that was an eye-opener for both of us, but I didn't have Bigfoot on the brain or nothing like that. I mean, it never really dawned on me. I always thought, it's just a TV show. Oh, it's just out west, or, I never thought it was somebody in a suit. It looked too good to be a suit, but I figured I was just out there by you guys. I thought that was your problem. I didn't know we had them here.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, Eric, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much, man, for coming on.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me on, dude. I'm a big fan, and I've got a lot of people listening to you now. So spread the word, brother. Spread the word for all you guys, researchers or just, people who believe, or the knowers, I should say. I'm definitely a knower. People ask, do you believe in Bigfoot? I'm like, no, I believe in Bigfoot, or I know in Bigfoot. I know they exist. I've seen them. I've dealt with them. I've had experiences that nothing else. It couldn't be anything else because you're so far in the woods in the middle of nowhere. Who's going to follow you out there? So, all right, brother, you have a good night, man, and I'm going to keep listening. I'll be, as the shows come out, I'll be supporting you, brother.
Thanks, Eric. And that's it for